Well, welcome back to Wake Up America Weekend. After days of threats and bluster, we now know Wagner Group leader Yevgeny Prigozhin will not march on Moscow.
And instead, the private military boss won a sweet new deal. Let's bring in our panel to continue this discussion. Retired Air Force Special Operations Commander Glenn Ignazio and retired Army Brigadier General and author of the book Total Empire, Anthony Tater, and foreign policy analyst Harley Lippman. Gentlemen, thank you all so much for being with us. Harley, I'm going to begin with you. Now, Prigozhin marched an armed insurrection basically towards Moscow, and then in the face of criminal charges, he apparently agreed to just back off and just face exile to Belarus after coming to an agreement with Putin. Do you think Putin will really leave it at that, or is there a little bit more to this?
Well, the consensus is that he's irreparably damaged, both at home and abroad, Putin. So he can't just leave it alone, and that the likelihood is he's going to crack down to reassert his authority, because his authority has been severely challenged, the most in the last 20 years. But I think what really happened is that, remember, these are mercenaries, and they get paid a lot of money. And it looked like that they were paid a lot of money to go march on Moscow, and then they're paid a lot more money to retreat from Moscow. And that's one theory as to what happened.
Certainly.
Yeah, gentlemen, according to the Washington Post, the discontent from the Wagner Group has been going on for some time now. The Post says that back in mid-June, U.S. spies learned about Prigozhin's plans to take on Russia's top military leaders. But it was not just the U.S. who knew. Intelligence agencies saying Russian President Vladimir Putin was also informed about the rebellion. If he knew, why would Putin allow for these kinds of optics to come out? Commander?
Yeah, I mean, basically, you take a look at this perspective is that the Wagner Group in Ukraine itself was lacking ammunition, supplies, and so forth. So that has been going on for a long time. And for them to be able to actually pull back and make something happen in Russia, it's sort of like a scream for attention. Now, he's got a huge issue with the defense minister and also the chief of staff. And to be able to actually say to Putin, hey, I'm done with these guys. I don't want to be underneath the defense ministry. I don't want to be underneath the DOD as far as their perspective is concerned. This is one way for him to take a serious move to actually wake Moscow up. But it has damaged greatly what's going on as far as the propaganda machine that everything's fine in Ukraine.
Yeah, and part of this deal was to stop Wagner forces from marching towards Moscow, and then the Wagner Group forces will then go actually back to their bases in Ukraine and be given the option to sign contracts with the Russian military. But Prigozhin himself would move to Belarus. General, I'll go to you on this one. Is Prigozhin retiring here, or could he be taking leadership of Russia's nuclear arsenal, which has actually already moved to Belarus?
Well, good morning, team. Lukashenko and Prigozhin are very close. And so I think what Lukashenko and both Putin really saw happen was maybe a little mini Berlin Wall moment, where you were reading about the momentum in Moscow and momentum in Belarus about perhaps throwing out the old vestiges of the Soviet Empire, which, Putin has been trying to reinstate. So they saw a real threat, Putin and Lukashenko did, and they cut a deal real quick. I'm sure money was exchanged, and I think Prigozhin feels probably more secure in Belarus with his friend Lukashenko. And he's friends with Putin, too, but certainly if you've led a armed rebellion against your leadership, then that old saying, if you don't, you better kill the king, right? So he didn't do that, and so it'll be interesting how it plays out.
Yeah,
Harley
much longer.
That's right. Harley, Prigozhin mostly criticized Russia's military leaders, but really criticized Putin himself. Do you think there are political dealings behind the scenes which motivated Prigozhin to send his forces in there? Or, who was this message for?
Well,
I think
Harley?
No, go ahead.
Yeah, sorry. I think that there are two dynamics taking place here. One, I think that there's genuine outrage at the incredible dysfunctionality and incompetence of both Russia's senior military commanders and their ground commanders. It's been a disaster for them, and I think that when they don't have enough ammunition and they're going into battle. That will make people angry, and that could bring on an insurrection or a coup d'etat here. You get that. But the other theory here is that what's going on behind the scenes is that since it started so quickly and ended so quickly, there are theories that something's amiss here, that what's going on behind the curtains is that this was a plan with Poroshenko and Putin to figure out who's really loyal to Putin, so that they would test it, see who's going to be loyal to Putin, and then act on it.
Yeah. General Ignacio, we have 1 minute left. I just want to quickly ask you, now, the Wagner Group is not the only force, like private military force, that is fighting inside Ukraine. Do you think this act, this rebellion, is going to embolden these other forces in any way?
You know, it may psychologically, but I mean, the Wagner Group is the biggest group out of this. I think one of the things you got to really think about, and from actually being in Ukraine and seeing this, is first of all, the Wagner Group has committed incredible atrocities and war crimes. They're not the best guys. But the other thing is we've always seen on the ground a break in the command and control from Russia to the field, and from Moscow to the field. And I think you see this critically. They asked for ammunition support, they didn't get it. And then why didn't Moscow know how quickly or how bad the situation was on the ground? They're even running their military that way. So I think there's incredible fractures within the military to the leadership of Russia.
All right. Commander Glenn Ignacio, General Anthony Tater, and Harley Lipman. Gentlemen, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. And we're going to continue our